Menopause, it can be a challenging time in a woman's life. Of course, there is the option of hormone replacement therapy, but this can sometimes have some undesirable side effects. So are there some natural solutions for menopause symptoms? Well, joining us today from Kelowna, British Columbia to discuss this is Liz Whitcomb. She is a natural nutrition clinical practitioner and a women's hormone health practitioner and the owner of Simply Balanced Holistics. Liz, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for having the menopause chat.
Yeah, I think it's important, right? Like, I mean, it's going to hit
Yeah,
all of us but at some point, sooner or later, right? And
exactly.
maybe first of all, tell us a little bit about your clinic and what kinds of health issues you typically treat.
Sure. Yeah. So I mostly work with women of all ages, helping them on their hormone journey. So I work for a clinic right there in Lethbridge, Roots and Fruits. I work with them virtually. And I also work for a virtual clinic up in Fort McMurray, where I used to live, mostly offering nutrition counseling with them. And then I do in person here in Kelowna at a clinic called Soka Healing. So yeah, mostly women, but I do work with men, women, children, you name it, for the nutrition side of things.
All right. Well, since we are talking about menopause, what are the different stages of it and what age range does this typically begin to take place?
Yeah, great question. So we'll start with the perimenopause phase, and there's like three phases here that you go through. So there's early perimenopause, which for some women can start in your mid to late 30s, but generally we're looking at early to mid 40s. And during this time, what you're going to see is you're still going to have a regular cycle, but things are going to either get a little bit longer, maybe a little bit heavier. You're going to start to notice like minor changes in the length and maybe severity of your period. And then when you go to mid menopause, this is when you start skipping months. So you go 2, 3 months maybe with not having a period. A few more symptoms start to creep in here. And then you get to late perimenopause, which is when you're getting closer to that 12-month anniversary of no longer having a period. And menopause is actually just like a 1 day event. It's like a tick on a calendar, essentially. And it's that 12-month anniversary. Yeah, I know. Like that. It's confusing. So, but it's like that 12-month anniversary of not having your period anymore. And then you're in postmenopause. And yeah, so the average age for menopause in North America is around 51, 52 years old. Um, but the best resource you have to kind of know when you'll go through this transition is to ask the women in your life. So if you have the opportunity to ask your mom, your aunts, your grandmother, genetics play a really big part here. So asking them can give you a pretty good idea of when you'll go through it.
Yeah, I mean, I know my mom seemed to suffer with it for about a decade. That's what it seemed like. So, I mean, and I think that mostly we're talking the symptoms of hot flashes. So, I mean, let's get into some of these symptoms of menopause. And it's possible she was already past it, but still experiencing symptoms. Maybe you can kind of clear that up for us.
Yeah, so with symptoms, honestly, it really comes down, like the severity of them comes down to how healthy you are, essentially, like how well you're feeding your body, are you moving your body, how's your stress. So some of the earlier symptoms you'll notice are like sleep disturbances and maybe some weight fluctuations. So these you'll see in like the early perimenopause phase. And then you move into the night sweats, the hot flashes, brain fog, mood disturbances. Some women even experience like tinnitus, the ringing in the ear, vertigo, frozen shoulders, a big one that we're hearing about now.
Frozen shoulder. What's
Yeah,
that?
it's so when you have trouble moving your shoulder up above, like,
A
yeah, or your
certain
arm,
range. Yeah.
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 So,
You don't have your full
um,
movement around.
yeah,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
from inflammation in the body. Yeah.
Mm,
And just because, I mean, it's a long list of symptoms. I know
yeah.
it might seem scary, but again, depending on your health, really depends on the severity. And you might not get all of those symptoms. One thing to keep in mind is everyone is very different. Women, we're all different in how we're going to go through.
Oh gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound pleasant. We'll just put it that Right. And I would think that the brain fog and all of that is attributed to the lack of sleep, which is attributed to the night sweats and the hot flashes.
It
It's
is
all
like,
part and parcel, I think.
yeah, there is a lot of connection with everything for sure, but there are ways you can help reduce the severity of those symptoms. It doesn't have to be a nightmare experience, you know. It is still a natural progression of life. I think it is still a little bit of a evolutionary mystery, but it it doesn't have to be awful.
Right. I alluded to this a little bit in the lead, but I've heard some bad and some great things about hormone replacement therapy. So, why are so many people hesitant to do this? I've heard it can actually be cancer causing. So, are there what's behind that?
Yeah, so I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't speak too much on hormone replacement therapy, but I can give my opinion. And what happened was in the 90s, there was a health study done, the Women's Health Initiative, um, and they were, doing giving hormone therapy to women for hot flashes. And there was some information that came out saying that it was breast cancer causing, but what they didn't share were all the actual benefits that also came with it. And the increase in breast cancer was minor. So I think there's more work that needs to be done and more studies that need to be done. I don't think women should be afraid of hormone replacement therapy. I think finding a practitioner, a doctor, a naturopath who you trust and who you can have a conversation with, um, and who is knowledgeable in this area to see if it's right for you.
Right,
Yeah.
because it is essentially a natural hormone that your body naturally produced that you're just putting back in your body. It seems
Yeah,
odd that it would
there are
have.
bioidentical hormone therapy.
Yeah,
So
no.
I'm open to it, but I am, going to make sure when that time comes, probably in the next 7 years or so, that I find the right practitioner to help me through that.
Well, Liz, you don't seem to mind sharing this publicly, but you personally have had some struggles with hormonal issues and with PMS, and you found some
Yeah.
help once you made some health changes in your life. So, can you share a little
Yeah.
bit about that with us?
Yes. So when I was a teenager and all through my 20s, I really struggled with my hormones. I was on every kind of birth control out there, I think, to try and regulate my hormones or balance out my period, which that's a whole other conversation. It doesn't actually work that way, but
Yeah.
I really struggled with, heavy periods, really bad cramping, migraines every month, anxiety, depression,
Mm.
you name it. And it wasn't until I went to school to be a holistic nutritionist that I actually found relief and realized that the power that food has on the body is just incredible. And it completely changed my life.
Okay, so with that in mind, how important is diet then in treating menopause? What kinds of foods tend to be effective in relieving some of these symptoms?
Yeah, so diet is so huge. I am a huge promoter with all of my clients eating real food. So you go to the grocery store and it's one ingredient foods, basically. Um, and if you're, buying processed foods, you're turning it over and you're not just looking at calories, you're looking at ingredients. And if you have a big long list like this full of things that you can't pronounce, it's probably better to put it back. It's
It's
probably
probably not
very
very natural.
exactly, yeah, it's going to be very inflammatory. Um, and we don't want that. So, eating real food, balancing your blood sugars, and eating anti inflammatory foods are going to be what help you the most through this transition. So, lots of clean, lean proteins, lots of fiber, complex carbs, and healthy fats.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what types of foods then should be avoided?
So the one
Just the opposite.
long list, the really long list on the back. So the highly processed foods
Mm.
are going to be the hardest on your body because of the amount of inflammation. When you go through menopause, so you are losing a lot of estrogen, and estrogen is very anti-inflammatory. So you're losing all those beautiful anti-inflammatory properties. So for eating inflammatory foods, it's the transition isn't going to be as smooth, essentially. So highly processed, refined sugars and your seed oils. So canola oil, sunflower oil are going to be red flags. and all the things you can't pronounce on the back of a box.
Yeah, exactly. Would any of those foods attribute to stomach issues as well as you're going through that perimenopause, like IBS suddenly creeping up? Is that at all ever an association?
Oh yeah, your gut health is so important. Yeah, so all of those foods are going to disrupt your gut microbiome, which you also don't want to happen during that transition.
Definitely. Now, one of the associated problems with menopause over time also can be decreased bone density and muscle mass. So I'm told that exercise, of course, is one of the solutions naturally. So how much and what kinds of exercise are we talking about here?
Yeah, so muscle building. You don't have to be a bodybuilder, but building muscle resistance training, picking up some heavy weights 3 to 4 times a week is going to be the most beneficial for you. So, muscle protects your bone. And once you're in your 30s, you start to slowly lose bone mass. And then once menopause hits, because of that decrease in estrogen, you're more at risk to have osteoporosis. So the more muscle you have leading up to that, the more protected the bone is at the end of the day. So resistance training, yeah, is your best friend. And like I said, you don't have to go and be a bodybuilder, but you do want to do some progressive overload so that you are constantly stressing and building that muscle.
Right. And of course, we talked about the sleep loss, one of those no fun symptoms of menopause. So, what
Yes.
are some of the potential answers for getting a good night's sleep?
Sleep, this one is tricky because yeah, it's one of the first symptoms to come when you start going through that perimenopause transition because you start to lose progesterone. And progesterone is like that calming hormone that helps you sleep. So when you start to lose it, your sleep can become disrupted. So this could be another area where maybe speaking to a professional about HRT could help. But from a natural standpoint, um, going to bed at a decent hour is going to help, like having a good nighttime routine.
Mhm.
Um, Getting off your phone or not watching TV 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed. That blue light can like trick your brain into thinking that it's
Sure.
daytime.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
it's going to really, really have a negative impact on your sleep. Sleeping in a cool room can really help, and having the room nice and dark. If there's light coming in, maybe getting like a face mask. My husband makes fun of me all the time for my little face mask, but
Oh, I do it too. Yep.
I'm
Love
sensitive to
it.
light. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, eating well also is gonna be
Yeah.
a
The
big
problem with the
factor.
cool room is that I guess like if you're going through sweats and then that
Mhm.
finishes, then you're freezing because your body is soaking wet.
It can be, yeah, yeah.
It's just not a good
Unfortunately,
time.
yeah.
And what about dealing with stress? Why is it that it's so much harder to deal with stress while going through this time of life?
Yeah, so when your body gets hit with stress, other functions in your body kind of take a back seat. So like your hormone regulation takes a back seat, fertility takes a back seat, digestion takes a back seat. Stress always wins. So when you're going through the transition, your hormones are kind of on a roller coaster ride, right? And when you add stress in there, well, you're just adding more ups and downs to this roller coaster ride, unfortunately, which you do not want, right? And stress, I always find, can be one of the more challenging topics when I'm working with clients because everyone views it differently. What stresses you out might not stress me out the same.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, in dealing with hot flashes, in dealing with all of this that's going on, what are some kinds of like, are there supplements, vitamins, minerals, anything that you would recommend to deal with these symptoms?
Yeah. With supplements, I'll be honest, it's tough to give a whole lot of info here without actually sitting down with someone to know exactly what they're going through
So
to
it's an
see it
individual journey.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like one supplement I could recommend, it would probably be magnesium.
Okay.
um,
Hmm.
just because it can help with sleep, it can help with mood, it can help with inflammation. But again, like dose, when to take it, what type is really just going to depend on the person.
What about ashwagandha? I've heard that that can help alleviate hot flashes and help get your sleep cycle back. Is there any truth to that?
Ashwagandha is really great for stress. So if you're under a lot of stress, it can be really great at helping kind of balance that out for you, which in turn would help with your sleep. and help with the hot flashes. Yeah, but working directly, I'd have to look into it. I'm not 100% sure if it works directly on hot flash, but as a whole system, it would help, I think. Yeah.
Sounds like such a big topic and it's such an individual journey, like we were saying. So I guess the best advice is to find yourself a practitioner like
I
yourself,
would,
right?
yeah, yeah. Really find someone who can help you work on the nutrition piece, the exercise piece, and the supplement piece, because it all works together, right? You can't do one without the others, basically.
If only there were one magic little pill that we
Oh no,
can make it
yeah,
all go
I
away.
know, right? Yeah, yeah. Someone out
Liz,
there must be able to do this for us.
Liz, thanks so much for your advice today and for being on. And how can viewers contact you for help?
Yeah, thank you for having me. The best place to reach me would be on my website, so simplybalancedwithliz.com. And there you can go on to my booking links depending on what type of a session you're looking for. And then on Instagram as well at simplybalanced.holistics.
Okay, because I believe that you do online appointments.
I do, yes. So virtual and in person if you're here in Kelowna.
Well, thank you so much. Liz Whitcomb is the proprietor of Simply Balanced Holistics.